Vice presidential nominee JD Vance is a landlord, and his tenant says that she has no problems with it. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and once again, I am tying the topics of politics and being a landlord together. And this time, I'm not talking about Joe Biden and ridiculous nationwide rent control proposals, okay? This time I'm talking about the vice presidential nominee, JD Vance, and the fact that he's a landlord of a property. Now, obviously, right, we're landlords. A lot of us who watch these videos, we're small landlords, and it's a good thing to see that we have people up in Washington, D.C. who can understand our business and why we are fighting so hard to make sure that our property rights are protected. Now, the only bad side about this, from what I can tell, is that he is a landlord of a property in Washington, D.C. Now, Washington, D.C. is a very anti-landlord place. So why would he own a property there? I'm assuming it's because he lived there part of the time when he is not in his home state. You know, he's a senator up in, I don't even know what state, I think it's Ohio. And so he has a property up in DC that he rents out. So, you know, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense to own a property in DC in a place that's so anti-landlord. But, you know, I guess if that is the business that you operate in, then it makes sense. So anyway, I'm going to get into more of the details of the story and what his tenant is saying about him in just a moment. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you believe that politicians should have, you know, the majority of politicians are going to have, you know, landlord rights and landlord policy as, you know, more favorable opinion towards landlords? That's really what I'm, you know, like, do you think that JD Vance, based upon, you know, his voting record as a senator, based upon the things that he said publicly, do you think that he's going to believe in property rights? Do you think he's going to be fighting for causes that landlords believe in? I do. Okay, and part of it is because he's a conservative. You know, part of it is because conservatives and Republicans in general are much more business friendly, and they believe in the Constitution a lot more than the other political party. But let me know what you think, okay? Is it all just a farce? Who knows? Who knows? But we're going to find out a lot more details about these people as we get closer to the election. So anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. This article is coming from a publication I don't use very often because it has a paywall, the Washington Post, and it says, Capitol Hill woman watches landlord accept GOP VP nomination, only in D.C. JD Vance's tenant says she has no complaints about her famous landlord. Good to know that, right? And like I've said about most landlords, most of us aren't slumlords. Most of us, you wouldn't even know that we were your landlord, aside from the fact that you write your checks out to us. So anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. To the thousands of people seeing or watching Senator JD Vance accept the GOP nomination for vice president last week, he was the Republican Ohioan of hillbilly elegy fame who evolved from a former never-Trumper into a Trump loyalist to land with Donald Trump on the 2024 presidential ticket. To Capitol Hill resident Ashley T., he was just her landlord. Seeing the news flash that Trump had chosen Vance as his running mate, she could only laugh, she said. There's a lot of like, only in D.C., said Ashley, who spoke on the condition of anonymity. Only her first name and the last initial be used because of concern about her family's safety. That was kind of the feeling, only on Capitol Hill. And, you know, I can't really blame her for not wanting to put her information out there because they might see her as being associated with him. A lot of people have extremist political views, and just better to let them know without giving out too much information. However, I will say that if his records are known publicly, you know, like I don't know how they do property records there. If he owns his property under his own name in Washington, D.C., then it might be possible for someone to say, okay, well, this is his property. Let me go by the address and then figure out that, oh, well, you know, he's using this as a rental property. So this tenant who's living in there might be associated with him. So, you know, it still might not be enough to keep from having to deal with repercussions of living in this place. Not saying that you should move out or whatever, right? Just saying in general that, you know, this is possible. She and her young daughter have been the Vance's tenants since November in a white brick row house that Vance and his wife, Usha Vance, purchased in 2014, back before either was in the spotlight. It's yet another local connection for the vice presidential pick, who last year also purchased a $1.6 million home in Del Rey, a liberal enclave in Alexandria, where residents have some mixed feelings about their new neighbor. But Vance, as a landlord, got no complaints from Ashley. "I love this house. I love this block. I want to be here for a long time," said Ashley, who's lived in the Capitol Hill area for 15 years. "So I want to be a good tenant, and I have great landlords. Usha's great." So, yeah. Sounds like typical small landlord to tenant relationship, okay? Basically, people are just working together, you know, no complaints, okay? And like I said about most landlords, we're following the law, we're following the rules of whatever jurisdiction we're working in, and hopefully she's paying the rent on time. That's it, okay? It's a business relationship. The political background of either the landlord or the tenant should be 100% irrelevant, you know? And that's my opinion, okay? Like, I will rent to anyone. I don't care what your political background is. That's not any of my concern. My concern is more, are you going to pay me my rent on time? And why do I operate that way? Because I'm a business person, okay? I'm business minded. And if I limited my tenants to just people who had the same ideological beliefs as me, well, I'm cutting out a huge portion of the population who may be willing to rent from me, okay? I'll gladly take your money. And I'm pretty sure most landlords are the same way. Not all of them. Okay, there are people who believe, hey, I'm not going to rent to that person over there because they are a, you know, opposite political spectrum of them. But, you know, that's their prerogative too, okay? The political beliefs are not a protected class. So if you want to deny somebody because they are on the opposite side of the political spectrum from you, I mean, according to the government at least, you can do that. The Vances bought the house for $590,000, according to property records, though it's unclear exactly how long the two or Vance himself lived there. He later took a job working for billionaire Peter Thiel's San Francisco investment firm, as Usha went on to clerk for Chief Justice John G. Roberts, Jr. So yeah, it sounds like they both were working in the area at the time, even though he's originally from Ohio and his permanent address is in Ohio. At the time, you know, she was clerking for one of the Supreme Court justices, and he was working for Peter Thiel, I guess, in that Washington, D.C. area, right? So when they decided to move out of the place, they became accidental landlords by holding on to the property. Now, this is one of the worst ways to become a landlord in, you know, these very anti-landlord places like Washington, D.C., but it sounds like, at least for now, it's working out for them. Okay, so, you know, it's hard to criticize it because I myself also turned several of my homes that I've lived in into rental properties after I moved out of them. But here's the difference, right? The main difference being that I turned them into rental properties, but I was already a landlord, okay? I already owned other rental properties. And I knew that the properties I was turning into rentals would make good rentals, would easily be able to cover all the bills, and I was in a landlord-friendly state where I wouldn't have to suffer if something went wrong. So, but anyway, that's beyond the point. The main point is that we may have somebody who is in the White House who has landlord rights on the top of their mind because they are a landlord, and that's a good thing.